Welcome to CEO Insights. I'm Marilyn de Guzman with Investing News Network. I'm speaking with Southstar Battery Metals CEO Richard Pierce, who's providing us an update on the company's two near-term production graphite projects. Hello, Richard.
Marilyn, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you again. Let's start off our conversation with just an introduction of Southstar Battery Metals and your company's projects.
Sure. So we've got two projects, one in Brazil, Santa Cruz, which is basically in construction. And we're going into production in phased approach. So phase one is 5,000 tons, phase two is 25,000 tons, and phase three is 50,000 tons of concentrate. So we're basically constructing phase one right now. Will be operational at the end of this year, cash flowing basically starting in January. Industrial metals are something that the commercial relationships have to be developed over time. So we like stepping into it before we really have to spend oodles of cash. And so, phase one is about a $10 million CapEx. Phase two is about a $35 million CapEx. And then phase three is about a $30 million CapEx. So in the next 4 to 5 years, we'll be spending basically $80 million to spin that up to 50,000 tons of concentrate per annum. It's in a great location, very close to the coast. We've got 3 major ports that are within a day's drive. We're on the energy grid. We've got water that'll be provided by wells for 1.3 kilometers off multi-lane paved federal highways. So a very favorable logistics, both for internal demand in Brazil as well as external demand for shipping across the world. And that's really our most advanced, kind of our flagship project. We have the BamaStar project, which is located in the U.S. in Alabama. We just completed our maiden resource estimate. We've got 22 million tons and resource about 520,000 tons of contained graphitic carbon. The drillers are basically getting ready to mobilize in the next week to 10 days. We'll be going out to do basically another drilling program to support our PEA. And then the idea is to get a PEA out in Q1 of 2024 with the strategic vision of the company, which is 2 mines, each producing 50,000 tons of concentrate, and a centrally located value-add plant so that we'll be vertically integrated, producing a variety of different value-add products, including coated SPG. And if we look at that sort of vision, of 100,000 tons of concentrate and 60 to 70,000 tons of value-add product, that's a pretty exciting revenue and margins and net free cash flow. So we're looking to get that basically out in Q1 of 2024. And in parallel, we will be drilling another 3,000 to 4,000 meters in Brazil at Santa Cruz, upsize our resource there, and then look to take our PFS, advance that basically to an FS study at the end of 24. And then we can make investment decisions on advancing to phase two and or phase three. There is a scenario where we actually skip phase two and go straight to phase three. So again, we're pretty excited about what we got in front of us. Lots going on, and really favorable results so far. So two strategic deposits with fantastic infrastructure, very complementary ore deposits, and a team that is composed largely of proven mine builders and mine operators. So we think that's a strong differentiator for us compared to a lot of other stories in the marketplace. And we'll be the first new graphite producer in the Americas really since 1996.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the Santa Cruz graphite project. So you're moving into construction, on production. I guess I want to get your insights on sort of how you're approaching the sustainability and the ESG aspects of that operation. How are you ensuring a lower carbon footprint for that operation?
Yeah, so if you look out across the space, you've got, certain components like energy. So for example, at Santa Cruz, particularly where we're located, 99% of all our power on the grid there is from hydroelectric facilities. So from a power generation standpoint, we're extremely lucky and blessed on where we're located. So all of our energy will come from hydroelectric sources. And in addition to that, there's very favorable short-term, medium-term loan facilities available. For example, solar assist programs. So within Brazil, you can set up solar facilities on your site. You can plug that energy back into the grid. It can really knock your energy price down, particularly as it relates to peaking power cost. And on top of that, you can neutralize some of the other components where you really can't, move away from diesel. So, for example, our rolling fleet, it's going to be, 25-ton trucks, basic excavators. It's all oxidized ore material, has surface mineralization. So it really doesn't make sense to use anything but diesel. But with the addition of solar and the drying for our larger plants will also be done with eucalyptus. So we are planning on, and that's a green resource. So again, instead of using, say, natural gas or electric to dry the concentrate, we'll be using renewable energy sources. So when we look out across the entire carbon footprint, the process of generating concentrate, it's not a huge energy demand. It's a pretty small footprint where we're at surface mineralization. The chemicals, for the most part, are very benign. So in terms of our overall footprint, producing con, particularly in Santa Cruz, will have an extremely small carbon footprint, if not a carbon neutral footprint by the time we get all the way up to phase 3.
And I want to ask you, so two of these projects are in the graphite space. So for investors that are unfamiliar, why focus on graphite and what are the market opportunities for that?
Sure. So, think of graphite basically in two buckets. You've got traditional industrial applications, which are growing, more or less at GDP. So it's refractories, it's high strength steels, lubricants, brake pads. There's a ton of different stuff that pencils. There's a ton of different stuff that you're actually using graphite in your everyday, and you may or may not even know about it. And that's more or less, around 600, 700,000 tons of demand currently, and is growing at GDP. Obviously, when you look at the value add components, be it electric vehicles or alkaline batteries or graphene, fire retards, etc., that's really, I think, the space that a lot of the growth is coming from, and that's growing at more or less 25% compounded annual growth. So, and currently that's again about half of the demand out there. So 2023 will have about 1.3, 1.4 million tons of global demand for natural flake graphite, and it's more or less split equally between traditional industrial applications and the value add component. But as we move into the future, and you get 3-4% growth versus 20 to 25% growth, obviously the pressure is going to be applied. And this is the first year where we actually are predicting a deficit of material. So there's not enough supply compared to demand. I've seen projections on everywhere between 50 all the way up to 150,000 tons of deficit this year. So we'll see kind of how it all plays out. But when you look at the mid to long term, and let's say 2 to 7 to 10 years, we basically need to bring 10 to 15 new mines online, meaning they have to be actually producing by 2025 to meet that demand. And that doubles again basically by 2030. So, on average, we've got a supply demand situation which is out of balance. You've got a very constricted supply. It takes a long time to bring these projects on. So, it takes whatever 10 to 12 years to actually bring a mine from concept all the way through to production. Sometimes a little more, a little bit less. Santa Cruz, for example, we started working really on that project in 2010. We're in 2023, and we're bringing it online. So I think that's fairly typical of the time frame. So when we look out across the entire 60 or so projects that are in the public market space, really there's almost not enough economic projects out there to meet this growing demand. So we feel very excited about having two near-term producing projects. Brazil will be online basically at the end of this year. BamaStar, we're looking at bringing that online in 2027, and then scaling from there. So I think we're well located with two amazing assets in strategic jurisdictions coming online right at the right time when there's a real imbalance between the supply and demand. And the macro setup is such that almost regardless of what happens in the world, the macro setup for EVs and a growing demand for lithium-ion batteries is not going away. So regardless of what happens, Marilyn, the macro setup is such that I don't really see anything that's going to change the dynamics of it, meaning I don't see any scenario out there where the grid power demands for storage systems, the EV power demand for storage systems is going to change anywhere in the near future, or let's say 7 to 10 year time frame. So if you look at the macro setup and the demand that's coming online, maybe for a variety of reasons, it's not quite as bad as, as they think it's going to be. Regardless, there's projections out there that say we need 97 new graphite mines between now and 2035. Even if half of that's true, there's going to be significant pricing pressure between the supply and demand. There's going to be a rising price, and it's just not possible to bring all of these mines online in time. So again, we'll have two projects that are scaling up. Have an executive management team and an operational team to deliver on these projections. And again, we're in two strategic jurisdictions, so we think we're fantastically located to be really one of the first movers in the space. And the contracts are such that a lot of these car companies, the only thing they're really worried about is guaranteeing supply for the next 20, 30 years. So they want to see long life mines facilities. They want to guarantee that the material is consistent with what they need in terms of chemistry, physical characteristics, as well as being able to deliver spec material as promised, and then also being able to basically execute on your business plan. So we feel like we'll be one of the first movers in the space. The contracts are such that it's usually a 5-year contract extendable for another 5-year period. So if we're able to execute on our business plan, which I have no reason to doubt that we will be able to execute on that very well, we'll basically be setting ourselves up for a decade of success as we move through this energy transition revolution that's going on. And there's nothing really on the macro scale that's going to derail that anytime in the next 5 to 10 years.
It sounds like you're really in the right place at the right time. So I wonder, are you also exploring sort of offtake agreements with end users? Like, is that something you're looking into or interested in looking into?
Absolutely, and that's kind of a piece of the puzzle. So again, I think when you look out across the graphite space, the majority of the projects only stand up if they can deliver coated SPG to battery companies. We're profitable producing concentrate at 5,000 tons. I'm more profitable producing con at 50,000 tons. And in the meantime, a lot of these contracts require you to provide samples at scale. So, send me a couple kilos, send me a couple tons, send me a container, and they'll basically slowly test your material at scale until they actually get to the point where they're like, yeah, your stuff is good. We'd like to set up a long-term contract for you. And it's a series of gates that you kind of have to walk your material through. And it's the same with all of them. Ford is the same as Tesla, is the same as GM, is the same as Volkswagen. So they all have a little different special sauce and a size gradation and things that they're looking for. But for the most part, the qualification period, it's the same. And it can take anywhere between 18 months to 3 years, depending on the company and what they're looking for. So when we lay out our commercial plan, we'll be selling, and we're happy to sell concentrate at 94 to 96%. We've got 40% EBITDA margins associated with that, and it gets better with time as we scale this thing up. We'll be taking a portion of our con and upgrading that so that we can start the different qualification periods. For example, lithium-ion batteries require 10 to 12 months to get qualified. We are well advanced in some of those conversations and have material in different stages of testing for that. So every year, 12 billion alkaline batteries get produced globally. It's a pretty nice market if you can get your material in there and get it qualified and start getting it in whatever your favorite battery company is. So again, I think as we looked at our commercial plan, we're very realistic about how we're profitable from day one. We scale our operations. We set up these offtake agreements where we can develop long-term commercial relationships with clients, and these clients will help us with their balance sheet, and firm offtake agreements help us finance future phases of development. So that's the way we're looking at it. When you look out across the capital stack, lots of projects are really struggling to finance their projects. We'll be in cash flow. I'll have a balance sheet. I'll have a bunch of clients. I'll have pricing. I can sit down with a bank anywhere in the world, and there's lots of development banks that we already have long-term relationships with here in Brazil, as well as in the U.S. and globally, as well as the traditional project finance banks. I can sit down with them, walk through our balance sheet, walk through our clients, and we think we can get very reasonable costs of capital associated with debt. We obviously have a fantastic partner in Sprott, and they are ready to help us finance phase 2, and always willing to consider future investments as well. So when we look at our capital stack, we've got fantastic opportunities for debt as we move into phase 2 and phase 3. We've got Sprott sitting alongside of us, ready to write checks, and really as we advance the project through to phase 3, I think we'll have lots of opportunity for additional offtake agreements with some prepayments, and then top it off with equity. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm not asking for $1.3 billion or whatever the price tag happens to be. Really what we say in Brazil is, I need $80 to $90 million in capital in the next 4 to 5 years. We can finance that, no problem. We'll be profitable as we work our way through this. And once we get to scale and we start looking at Alabama, both on the con side as well as the value add side, I'll have material that's basically set up and ready to go, and I just need to build the plant and we're good to go. So I think, there's some significant advantages to the way that we're developing the projects in phases. And more companies don't do this. What we're proposing to do is because they're not economic at just selling con. So again, we have very favorable economics. Our capital intensity extremely low. We'll be first quartile of OpEx. So we're profitable throughout the ups and downs of commodity cycle. So again, I think we've got some significant advantages compared to the vast majority of other projects out there. And again, we'll be the first new producer really in next year. So I think it's a smart way to allocate capital. I think it's a realistic way to finance these projects, which everybody in space knows it. I mean, projects are just stacked up because they can't get them financed. And on top of that, we've got the opportunity with Alabama to get DoD, Department of Defense, through the DPA, the Defense Production Act, as well as DOE loans associated with that project. So the DoD DPA funding is basically a dollar for dollar grant, meaning at every dollar we spend, they spend a dollar beside us, and we never have to pay that back. And then the DOE is very low cost loans associated with it. So that would fit in really with, the idea of a development bank or similar, where, it's very low cost loans over longer periods, nice grace period, low interest rates, et cetera. So I think when we look at the two projects, they're very complementary. We'll have a variety of mechanisms to finance these realistically in the next 5 to 7 years. And again, if we look at that vision of 100,000 tons of con and 60 to 7,000 tons of value add, that's all, ballpark numbers are, kind of 1.2 to 1.5 billion dollar market cap company with $650 million annual revenue and good margins associated with it. So it's pretty exciting numbers when we think that we can bring that on in 5 to 7 years, exactly at a time when supply and demand is out of balance, and there's nothing really that's going to change that scenario in the next 5 to 10 years.
And the Alabama sounds really a strategic opportunity right now. So do you have some timeline on, I know you've you've mentioned sort of the status of the project right now, but are you able to provide some timeline on when you think you can start production, or that comes into production?
Yeah, 2027. So again, what we're planning on doing is, again, it'll be a phased approach into production. So we'll have, on the con side and the mine side, we'll have two phases. Phase one, which is 25,000 tons, then we step that up to 50,000 tons of con. Probably the majority of all the production from Alabama will be geared towards the value add. It's a mirror image, really, of what we have in terms of grain size distribution in Brazil. So in Brazil, it's principally medium to large flake deposits. So we've got 65% thereabouts. That is 80 mesh and above. We've got let's say a third of the deposit is fines. For the value add component, principally, it's the fines that they want. So again, the two projects are kind of mirrors of each other. It's very likely that the vast majority of everything we produce in Alabama will go into the value add. I'm happy to sell con from Brazil, and we look forward to doing that. So when we look at the sequence, it's the first ore that we can actually ship to the value add plant comes from Brazil. We phase that into production. We keep the streams of con separate, so the Alabama is always kept separate from the Santa Cruz, so that we can have full traceability on clients. They want to be able to trace where that material is coming from, in case for whatever reason there is a problem. So we'll keep the streams separate. We're building everything in a modular fashion, so that for the most part, the plant in Brazil for con is the same exact plant as the plant in Alabama. Then obviously the value add component will step up in three phases as well. So again, as the market demands new material and as we kind of get new orders from clients, we have the ability to grow this into 60 to 70,000 tons of value add over the next 5 to 7 years. So again, the plan is in Brazil will be phase one will be 2 years. We bring it online basically at the end of this year. 2 years operating at phase two, and then life of mine at phase three. So basically in 5 years we're at full build out here, or at least up to 50,000 tons. In Alabama, we're looking at, again, 2 phases on the mine. Phase one will be online basically in 27, plus the value add component, which will have 3 phases to it. Again, first phase comes online in 27. We honestly think that we will be likely to be the first new graphite producer in North America as well. So again, I think when you look at our capital stack and our capital cost, our OpEx, I think we'll have some very favorable terms and conditions that we can finance without too much trouble and bring it online quickly. In the U.S. today, there's only 2 graphite projects in the continental U.S. and only 3 in the entire U.S. that actually have a defined resource or more information there. So again, if we get our PEA out here in the next couple months, get this drilling program wrapped up, and I'm pretty excited about the prospects associated with that. There's not a lot of other projects out there, and for a variety of reasons. Again, I think because, for example, we're on private property and we're on private mining claims, I don't have to do anything with the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management. We can get this permitted based on our initial consultations, all at the state level. I don't have to involve the Army Corps of Engineers as long as I stay out of navigable waterways and the wetlands, and that's our plan. So again, I think with the favorable infrastructure, our ability to permit Alabama basically at the state level, it's really an exciting opportunity to get something online quick. And that's exactly what the DPA is set up for. I mean, the Defense Production Act is trying to get critical metals online as quickly as possible so that they can be less dependent on, an imbalanced supply chain. And SouthStar is set up to really help make that happen.
Right. Well, exciting times ahead for the company for sure. Thanks for sharing the updates on her exciting projects with us today.
Thank you, Marlene. Pleasure to see you again. Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. And thanks for joining us. Join us again next time for another engaging conversation on CEO Insights.